Does Robert Kraft have the guts to fire Jerod Mayo? I give you my prediction here on Patscast.
It's been a rough year. The team's on the ropes. Mayo's in the spotlight, running out of hope. The fans are chanting.
Welcome to Patscast. I'm Brad Whitaker. Good to be with you. We all know that Patriots head coach Jerod Mayo is on the hot seat this week. Peter Schrager tweeted out something today that sparked a little bit of conversation, saying, from an NFL source not affiliated with either franchise, do the owners in New England see Vrabel interviewing with the hated rival Jets today and have any reaction to that news at all? Obviously, Mike Vrabel had his first interview with the New York Jets on Friday. I guess the interview went very well. Vrabel will have interviews with other teams. The Jets will interview other candidates, but sounds like it went well. But I've been saying this for weeks. Mike Vrabel clearly wants to be the New England Patriots' next head coach, and he's trying to force Robert Kraft's hand right now. And that was before a report came out earlier this week from Sportskeeda's Tony Pauline saying, quote, Mike Vrabel is using the Jets as leverage to get the job he wants at the salary he wants. Word is that the Las Vegas Raiders will make a run at Vrabel, but people don't believe he wants that job either. Vrabel wants the New England Patriots job. Again, that was Tony Pauline, the same guy that reported last winter that if the Patriots can't get Jayden Daniels, they will trade back and select J.J. McCarthy. So take it with a grain of salt. That said, although I'm skeptical of Pauline's reporting here, there's plenty of reason to believe Vrabel wants the Patriots job. I've been saying this for weeks. Number one, he's a Patriots Hall of Famer. He has the red jacket, a great relationship with Robert Kraft and the rest of the Patriots organization, has his franchise QB in Drake May on a rookie contract. Remember, he had a lot of success early on in Tennessee with Ryan Tannehill as his quarterback. So Drake May, he does as well at the other positions, and he has Drake May. Like, he's going to be better off than he was in Tennessee. They have the most cap space in the entire NFL. And if the Patriots lose to Buffalo on Sunday, they will have the number one pick in the NFL draft. When you factor all of those variables together, this has to be the most attractive head coaching gig in decades, assuming they fire Jerod Mayo. Drake May, rookie contract, high ceiling, did a lot with very little, most cap space in the NFL, potentially the number one draft pick. You also have the hype coming out of Travis Hunter, coming out of Colorado. There's a lot that you could do coming into New England if they were to clean house, and that's going to be attractive to all of the top-tier candidates, including Mike Vrabel, who I think wants to be the Patriots head coach, and Ben Johnson, who's going to be looking for a head coaching job this offseason. So, look, regardless, Robert Kraft, he's dealing with a PR nightmare here, whatever he decides to do. And we know he has a great relationship with Jerod Mayo. Obviously, it seems like more than 90% of Patriots fans want Jerod Mayo fired at this point. In fact, I'd say 90% of the Boston sports media wants him fired at this point. I think Tom Curran is the one last holdout. He's still trying to find a happy medium. He had Michael McCann tweet at him a couple weeks ago that maybe they should just hire a football czar like Scott Pioli to take the Bill Parcells Miami role, just kind of oversee everything, be part of the day-to-day operations. He's the only one that's floating that out there now. Pretty much everybody else in the Boston sports media wants Mayo gone, but also everyone thinks that in all likelihood, he's probably going to be back at this point, but it is teetering a little bit, and, I heard Greg Bedard say he thinks it's 60-40 Mayo's going to be back. I've heard 50-50. Personally, I'll give you my prediction at the end here, which may be a little bit surprising, but like I said, this is going to be a PR nightmare. If Jerod Mayo stays, you have all the Patriots fans who want him to be fired. If Jerod Mayo goes, you have the backlash of firing a first-year head coach, the youngest in the league, who has arguably the worst roster in the NFL, and a guy he essentially promised the job to more than 5 years ago in Israel before Jerod Mayo had even coached a game as an assistant, which was a little weird. I'm sure it was a nice trip. Jerod got baptized in the Jordan River. Their flight got delayed going home. I guess Jerod called a meeting with everyone to talk about their learnings and things like that, and it was really nice. Still has absolutely nothing to do with coaching football in the NFL. I don't know why that was the reason Jerod Mayo became the head coach 5 years ago. He would have been 33. I'm 33 right now, so he would have been my age, 33. I'm not ready to be an NFL head coach. No, I'm not, obviously not an NFL guy. I ran cross country in high school, so that's not going to happen. But still, 33 years old, essentially promising him the head coaching job and then writing it into his contract, a few years later that he's going to be the heir apparent to Bill Belichick so I can avoid the Rooney Rule in doing any of these interviews. It was kind of sleazy, not to mention, and Greg Bedard talked about this, I guess Jerod Mayo, a few years ago, his agent leaked a story to the Houston Chronicle about how Jerod Mayo is like the next amazing young head coach, and this was all a ploy by Mayo to eventually get a head coaching job, whether it's with the Patriots or somebody else. So it hasn't been a very good look, but regardless, Kraft obviously didn't go through the right process, but if he's firing a first-year head coach, the youngest in the league with the worst roster in the NFL, not giving him much of a chance, it's not very fair. But, it's not going to look good there, a PR nightmare. Not to mention, he would be firing the first black head coach in Patriots franchise history. Let's not pretend there won't be any backlash for that. Bill Belichick went 5-12 his first year as Patriots head coach. Bill Parcells went 2-14, and both had arguably better rosters and more talent. Those guys are able to stay on after 1 year, one bad year, and it worked out pretty well. You let Jerod Mayo go after 1 year, people are going to be screaming racism. They're going to be screaming all sorts of things. Like, it's going to be a PR nightmare either way. Either you're going to get it from the fans, or you're going to get it from the media and some of the fans. That said, you look at Bill Belichick, you look at Bill Parcells. Both were showing growth at the end of those rookie seasons as head coach. Mayo's team is going backwards, and it's going backwards fast. Let me ask you this question, and this has been posed on WEEI 98.5. A lot of people have been asking this question. If Jerod Mayo were to be fired, would he land a defensive coordinator job somewhere else? I think the answer is probably not. If that's the case, that's all the argument you need. You shouldn't keep him on as your head coach. If he's not good enough to be a defensive coordinator for one of the 32 NFL teams, then he's not good enough to be the head coach of one of the most storied franchises in NFL history. Now, I get it. People are saying Dan Campbell had a bad first year, and look at where the Lions are now. Dan Campbell had 10 years of experience before becoming a head coach, including 5 years as an assistant head coach and a year as an interim head coach. It is not the same situation. Jerod Mayo didn't even win a Super Bowl with the Patriots as an assistant coach. He came on in 2019, Brady's last year, and wasn't even the defensive coordinator. He was a linebackers coach. He kind of split DC duties with Steve Belichick, and I think Mayo got a lot of the credit there for the scheme and leading the meetings, and Steve Belichick called plays, but now in hindsight, looking a year out, I think Steve Belichick had a much bigger role than we were expecting there. So it is not apples to apples between Dan Campbell and Jerod Mayo. And is there anything about this season that makes you think Mayo is going to make a giant leap in year two? If this team started playing better down the stretch, if it looked more like the Buffalo game a couple weeks ago instead of Arizona or the Chargers game last week, I'd probably say yes. I wouldn't say like they're definitely a playoff team, but I'd say Mayo could probably come back and win 7 or 8 games last year, but just watching the way things are falling apart right now, I mean, we could be looking at a number one draft pick again next year if Jerod Mayo comes back. That's really how I feel right now. But not only is the team playing worse, especially defensively, the culture is starting to really break down, and that's something I think Jerod Mayo actually hasn't gotten enough credit for. I think for culture, I think he actually has established somewhat of a positive culture there in New England, and nobody really talks about it. And that was the reason he was ultimately hired. The reason the Patriots wanted to move on from Belichick, they didn't want the grumpy, curmudgeon, drill sergeant, know-it-all head coach. They wanted the open, collaborative players coach that understands the player's perspective. And for the most part, Jerod Mayo has done that. His team plays hard for 60 minutes. The players have his back, except for maybe Keon White. I don't think Keon White likes him very much. But other than Keon White, all the other players have said nothing but glowing things about Jerod Mayo. In fact, players have his back so much that the underperforming and recently extended linebacker Jelani Tavai put his foot in his mouth earlier. Remember how the Patriots against the Chargers last week were booing all game and chanting, "Fire Mayo"? Well, Tavai was asked about that today on the Greg Hill show on WEEI, and he said, quote, I was frustrated. I definitely told a fan to quiet down in a non-polite way. There's a reason why they're fans. They're not qualified to do what Mayo is doing. They're fans. Appreciate them at times, but sometimes they just gotta know their place. That is the last thing you want to do in any professional sport, is call out the fans of your current team. You're not calling out Jets fans. You're calling out Patriots fans. The people who are making a fraction of the money that you are, that are taking time out of their day to watch you play, and that have to watch you lose 40-7 to the LA Chargers. You do not criticize the fan base. That is the last thing that you do. You say, we have the greatest fans in the world. I don't care where you are. Jacksonville Jaguars, Mac Jones in an interview, if he gets asked about the fans, we have the greatest fans in the world. Jacksonville Jaguar Nation, we have the greatest fans in the world. That is always the answer. I don't know what Jelani Tavai is doing. And it's not just him. Dietrich Wise also recently called Patriots fans spoiled. He did try to walk it back a bit, and be fair, we were pretty spoiled for 2 decades, and we're spoiled in general. The Celtics just won the title. Red Sox have won 4 titles in the last 20-plus years. I mean, we are pretty spoiled. He's right about that, but you don't say that. You don't say that about your own fan base. And to Jerod Mayo's credit, he spoke to the media today and said he talked to Tavai, and he says players are getting caught up in defending him. Mayo told the players, the fans pay the bills. So that was good to see. Jeremy Springer, the special teams coach, also had a great quote because he was asked about that at a press conference today. He said, if you don't want to get shot, don't join the Army. That's a good response. So, you know, I like that. I think Mayo handled that well. Springer handled that well, but clearly the message wasn't getting through to the rest of the team when Jelani Tavai is going on WEI or Dietrich Wise is going out and saying things like that, bashing the fan base. It's not a good look. Nobody's going to be happy. Everyone's going to be pissed off, and you can bet the Boo Birds are going to be out Sunday against the Bills, and the Fire Mayo chants and all of that. And the only reason it may not be enormously loud is because Patriots fans may just simply not show up because there's been empty seats all season long. Anyways, despite Mayo speaking to Tavai and his players, Tavai still doubled down. He said, if they're fans, be fans. Support us. They've supported us throughout worse seasons, but don't be a critic. I'm not going to your job and telling you how to do your job. You're a public figure. Everyone's a critic. Everyone's the media now. How about you tackle J.K. friggin' Dobbins, all right? And stop talking about how the fans are pissed off because you only have 3 wins this season. Like, that's ridiculous. You don't say stuff like that. And remember, this is a guy the Patriots just extended and who's really underperformed this year. So, anyway, things are going well in New England. You know, I do think the buy-in is there among the players. The problem is they're buying into an overly tolerant, undisciplined, losing culture. Kraft and Mayo never set the expectation that they were trying to win a lot of games this season. In fact, they said the opposite before the season. The only game they really care about winning is this week against the Bills. The game they should probably lose on purpose. You know Jerod Mayo, Alex Van Pelt, DeMarcus Covington and company are really trying to win that game, the one game they shouldn't be trying to win. But meanwhile, they went into the season saying, it's a rebuilding year, we'll see what we can do. That was the culture. And I like that the players played hard. I like that they have Jerod Mayo's back. I like that there seems to be buy-in, even if they're buying into a turd sandwich. But it needs to be better. You need to win football games. And look, I do think firing Jerod Mayo after 1 year is unfair, but this is Robert Kraft's fault. He let him in a little too early. He didn't have a lot of experience. He gave him a terrible roster. And I would feel differently if the team looked like they were getting better, but they are getting precipitously worse. I think I said that word correct. Precipitously. They are getting worse. They are getting much worse. Anyways, you know where I'm leaning. Do I think Robert Kraft is going to fire Jerod Mayo? My prediction, believe it or not, since the loss against the Chargers, I actually do. I think Jerod Mayo's out. Things have gotten so bad. He was hired to be a defensive head coach. The defense has gotten worse. The offense is actually improving under Alex Van Pelt as OC. I hope the rumors aren't true. The Pats will scapegoat AVP and keep Mayo and Covington because that is the exact opposite thing that I would do. The culture, which I think Mayo gets at least deserves a little bit more credit for, seems to be falling apart. He threw AVP under the bus after the Arizona game. He contradicts himself constantly at the podium and has to walk things back. He told the media last Sunday that Ramondre Stevenson wouldn't start as punishment for fumbling the week before against the Bills. Antonio Gibson was supposed to get the start. He told the media that. He told multiple media outlets that, including NFL Network, who was covering the game. And he started Ramondre Stevenson anyway. The NFL Network commentators were shocked. Some of your foundational defensive players, Jelani Tavai, Kyle Duggar, Jonathan Jones, they've regressed dramatically. And I think the biggest thing, and the reason why I think ultimately Robert Kraft is going to pull the trigger here, where I don't think he would otherwise, is the opportunity cost of losing out on a potential top-tier head coach like Mike Vrabel or Ben Johnson. I mean, those are two of the better candidates we've had over the last few years. I guess Jim Harbaugh was up there. There's been some other candidates. Belichick could have been a candidate last year, but wasn't. That was a little strange. But, you had the chance to get one of these head coaches who can turn this organization around right away. You might as well do it instead of taking another risk and having to do it all over again next year when it doesn't work out with Jerod Mayo. Now, a week ago, I wouldn't have said this. I wouldn't have said Robert Kraft would do that. I think he would have gone the Tommy Curran, football czar, maybe Scott Pioli route and keep Mayo and at least one of the coordinators. But after losing 40-7 to the Chargers, which is a good team but not a great team, I don't think that's the case any longer. I think Kraft will actually go through with it. He'll admit that they were wrong and they took shortcuts last year. They're going to blow the whole thing up, including the front office. They're actually going to do a full coaching and GM search, and they're going to be willing to spend money because they haven't been willing to spend money the last few years, and it hasn't worked out. So they're going to have to spend a lot of money, not just to hire guys like a Mike Vrabel or a Ben Johnson or a Josh McDaniels or a top-end GM. They're also going to have to buy people out that are under contract currently. I don't really know Jerod Mayo's current contract details. I don't know if that's publicly available, but I guarantee it's multi-year, and it's multi-year for a lot of these coaches. They're going to have buyouts, so it's going to be very expensive, and that might be the one reservation that Robert Kraft has about this, is the money aspect of it, which is, look, we could just give it another year, see if it works out with Mayo, and then blow it up next year at cheaper costs with less buyouts. But the problem with that is Mike Vrabel will take a job with the Jets or the Bears or the Raiders, or Ben Johnson will, and you may lose out on some of these top candidates, and we don't know who the candidates will be next year. So, I think we know the two candidates that's on everyone's mind, Mike Vrabel and Ben Johnson. I've mentioned them many times. But the Pats will have to go through, if they fire Jerod Mayo, they'll have to go through a real search. They'll have to follow the Rooney Rule. I'd love to see them interview Brian Flores. I think he's done a great job as defensive coordinator in Minnesota. I think he's earned another head coaching role. Have some concerns about what happened with Tua when he was the head coach in Miami, but hopefully he's learned from that. I think he would be an excellent head coach if he were to come to New England. I'm not sure I'd put him ahead of Vrabel or Ben Johnson, but maybe he does an interview and blows him away. I've been very impressed with Brian Flores. Same with Eric Bieniemy, who I think I was the only one advocating for as head coach last season. Of course, he was just fired as UCLA's offensive coordinator, so probably not the value add I thought he was. But assuming it comes down to Vrabel and Ben Johnson, the Patriots might actually be able to make their pick. Vrabel is certainly interested, and Johnson, he has ties to New England. He coached at Boston College. He went to North Carolina, has the connection with Jerod Mayo. I think he'd be heavily interested. Like I said, I think this is one of the most attractive head coaching gigs, at least in recent years. And I know the Patriots are a cold weather team. They play in they don't even play in Boston. They play in a small town south of Boston. Taxes aren't great, but they do have stable ownership for the most part. Cap space, great draft position, and they have a few foundational pieces, and of course the franchise quarterback. I think the Patriots are going to be able to pick and choose whoever they want as head coach if Robert Kraft has the guts to move on from Jerod Mayo. But this decision, let's say it comes down to Ben Johnson and Mike Vrabel, I think between those two candidates, you're basically choosing between offensive ingenuity and organizational stability. Ben Johnson, the NFL is certainly heading in the direction of offensive ingenuity. Imagine what he could do with Drake May relative to Jared Goff. I mean, you look at Sean McVay with the LA Rams. He was able to do a lot with Jared Goff, but he was able to do even more once he got Matthew Stafford there. I think it would be the same deal with Ben Johnson in New England with Drake May, who seems to get better every time he's on the field. Johnson's also a high ceiling candidate. He could be considered the next Sean McVay, the next Kyle Shanahan, the next brilliant young NFL mind. But the issue there is, do they really want to take a chance on another first-year head coach after the Jerod Mayo experience? Also, as much as we talk about the offense, the offensive line, the lack of weapons Drake has to work with, the real issue on this team is not the offense. It's actually the defense, and that's why I think Mike Vrabel might be a better candidate. Like I said, I think Ben Johnson has the high ceiling. He's the guy who could go on and win 4 Super Bowls as a head coach, or he could fail year one, and we're in the same situation. That's why I'm a little bit hesitant, and I'd much rather go with the organizational stability of a guy like Mike Vrabel. First of all, like I said, I know the offense has less talent than the defense, but the defense has been underperforming relative to the offense. Mike Vrabel is a defensive-minded head coach. I think he could patch that together considering the personnel the Patriots have and assuming they make a few moves in the offseason. Brilliant football IQ. He knows all the rules, all the tricks. He stole the he stole the drain the clock on the what was it? It was Tom Brady's last playoff game, right, in New England, and I think there was like 7 or 8 minutes left on the clock. The Titans had the lead, and they were about to punt the ball, and they kept taking delay of game penalties to run the clock, which was a trick that he stole from Bill Belichick, and that ultimately drained the clock and gave the Patriots very limited opportunities and ended Brady's career with the New England Patriots. That's what Mike Vrabel is capable of doing. Very few coaches have that kind of IQ. He knows all the rules, all the tricks. He would be excellent there. It'd be much closer to Belichick in terms of football IQ than what we've seen this last season. And most importantly, he knows where to delegate and knows where to get heavily involved. Not to mention, I don't think Mike Vrabel is an internal hire like Jerod Mayo was. I know he has a big history with the Patriots, but as a player, he played for the Steelers. Before he was with the Patriots, he played for the Chiefs afterward. He coached at Ohio State. He was a defensive coordinator for the Houston Texans, head coach for the Titans, most recently a consultant for the Browns. Unlike Mayo, who's only spent time in New England, Vrabel has an extensive network, and he made some really great hires when he initially got to Tennessee. Matt LaFleur, who's now the head coach of the Green Bay Packers. That was a discovery of Mike Vrabel. He hired him as his offensive coordinator. Arthur Smith was the next offensive coordinator under Mike Vrabel. He's now the head coach for the Atlanta Falcons. So, yeah, Vrabel, I think in terms of delegating, in terms of figuring out where to meddle and where to be kind of the background CEO that Jerod Mayo kind of has been, like, he knows where that fine line is, and I think he can do an excellent job and bring in a really good staff as well. But, there are some concerns with Vrabel. He did have a bit of a falling out with the owner and GM in Tennessee, finished 6-11 his last year there. Also has a bit of a brash personality. It seems like the Krafts wanted more of a player's coach. I've talked about this a lot on the podcast. NFL owners constantly go back and forth between drill sergeant coaches and friendly player coaches, and when one doesn't work out, they go to the polar opposite. This would be an acknowledgement that the player's coach is not what Robert Kraft wants. He wants the drill sergeant. He wants the Bill Parcells, Bill Belichick coach, which Mike Vrabel would be. There's also the rumor that he'd bring along Josh McDaniels. Is that for better or worse? I'm not sure. I think it's for better personally, because what I like about Josh McDaniels, obviously he had so much success with Tom Brady as an offensive coordinator in New England, not as a head coach, but as an offensive coordinator. I think with him, he's not ideological. I know he likes the Earhart-Perkins offense and that the Patriots ran for 20 plus years, but he's always been able to adapt his offense to the players that he has on the field, which I think has been, my biggest criticism of Alex Van Pelt, because Van Pelt is like an old school West Coast offense guy, not a Shanahan guy, more of a Mike McCarthy guy, and he kept trying to pigeonhole that offense with the players he has, and it just doesn't work. Like you have Cole Strange, he's kind of a West Coast wide zone blocker, but then you have Mike Owenu, he's much better in power run and gap stuff, and AVP was trying to pigeonhole his ideology with the Patriots offense, and it struggled at times. I think Josh McDaniels, he's going to look at the roster and he's going to maximize what this offense can do based on the personnel that he has. So that's why I think it's good if he does bring along Josh McDaniels. But, there is the concern that the league has blown by McDaniels at this point, that his philosophy may be a bit antiquated at this point. I don't think that's true, but I understand the concern. But then another thing with Mike Vrabel, if you bring in Josh McDaniels as the offensive coordinator, I would still try to keep Alex Van Pelt. If he's willing to take a demotion, I think he would be an excellent quarterbacks coach for Drake May. He deserves all the credit in the world for Drake May's development this last year. I love to keep him there. Don't love the play calling. Don't love the creativity. I like the early game scripts from AVP, but then when he's pulling from his toolkit, not great. If he was just on as a QB coach and you had Josh McDaniels calling the plays and scheming things up, I think that would be the ideal scenario. So I don't know if AVP would be willing to do it, but he's probably not going to get an offensive coordinator job somewhere else if he gets fired along with Jerod Mayo. And, he could be a position coach. He could be a QB coach somewhere. But why not stay in New England with the quarterback that you've been working with and see what you can do there? You could make a lateral move somewhere. You could be a QB coach in New England, or you can make a lateral move somewhere else. You might as well stay in New England. And as I said, AVP, he's been in the league for a while. Maybe he doesn't want to move somewhere. We don't know. So I would love to keep him if that's what they want to do, but we'll ultimately see. Overall, though, I think it's going to be Mike Vrabel. I just think Ben Johnson, I know the ceiling's high. I know he's kind of the modern NFL head coach who's going to have all the tricks in the world offensively in terms of scheme, but we don't know who he's going to bring in on defense, which is where the real struggles are right now. And you're bringing in a first-year head coach. And I think Mike Vrabel, his connections to the organization, the fact that he really wants to be there, the fact that he's been making moves for weeks now, putting feelers out there, letting it be known that he wants to be the Patriots head coach, putting Robert Kraft in the tough position that he's in now. I think Mike Vrabel is ultimately the guy, and I think that's the guy. Kraft loves Vrabel, obviously, too. So, it's going to be an emotional decision if Kraft does let go of Jerod Mayo, but he's also hiring a guy that he's emotionally connected to in Mike Vrabel. So I think it will be him if he makes the move, and I think the Patriots will go through with it, but we'll see what happens. In other news, the Patriots, like I said, they'll land the number 1 overall pick if they lose to the Bills on Sunday. Some good news. Christian Gonzalez, Ben Brown, Jalen Polk, and Jabril Peppers have all been ruled out, so that'll help. Although I think having Polk on the field might actually help them lose, but losing Gonzalez and Peppers is a big deal, and Ben Brown's been salvageable at center, so Cole Strange's had some mistakes last week, even though he did look pretty good at times. Drake May, he's also questionable with a mysterious hand injury, but all indication is he's ready to go this week. We know the Patriots will not tank this game. It's safe to say the coaching staff feels like they are coaching for their jobs. Devin McCourty went on Kay Adams' show earlier today, and he said, quote, "Just from talking to those guys, they do feel like they're coaching to make sure that they're back. I don't think there's this feeling of, hey, we're safe, we're good. I think there is a little bit of a sense of urgency." So they're clearly trying very hard to win on Sunday. They may even try harder to win on Sunday than they did in previous weeks. I don't know why Jerod Mayo put Drake May back in the game when I think he had a concussion last week, by the way. That was clearly a worse hit than the one he took a couple of months ago where he ended up having to sit out the rest of the game. I think he just knew the answers to the tests and the concussion protocol and got back out there, and Jerod Mayo wants to keep his job, so he put Drake May back out there. So it'll be interesting because Joe Milton has been taking snaps this week with the first team. So, look, we know Drake May is probably going to start unless his hand injury is an excuse to get him to sit, but I don't think that's going to happen. Right now, the plan is Josh Allen is going to start for the Bills because he does care about his consecutive starting quarterback streak or whatever it is. He does care about that, so he's gonna play at least one series, but for the most part, the Bills are going to be playing backups on Sunday. If I'm the Patriots, I start Drake May, and the second the Bills pull Josh Allen, that's when I pull Drake May and put Joe Milton in there. And, hopefully they lose. it's going to be weird. I think we may actually have a situation where the Patriots fans are cheering for the Bills on Sunday, which will be hilarious. But I think Jerod Mayo really wants to keep his job and the coaching staff as a whole. So they're really fighting to win this one. But luckily, this is a bad roster. It's a poorly coached team with tons of injuries. It's not likely that they win, even going against Mitch Trubisky and the Bills' backups. I mean, they lost 40-7 last week in cold weather in New England against a team that plays in Los Angeles. Like, I don't think they're going to beat the Bills' backups, but we'll see what happens. If the Patriots win, like I said, they'll get the number 1 pick. If they lose, they could fall as far as the 4th overall pick. I have heard rumors that they could fall to 5, but I've also heard that the Jaguars, it would take a statistical miracle for them to jump to 4. So not likelihood the Patriots, if they lose, they won't drop any further than 4. And there are scenarios, too, where if the Patriots lose, they could still have the number 2 pick. I mean, they could lose and still have the number 1 pick if everybody else loses, but some of the matchups with the teams behind them are a bit favorable for the Patriots. So they do have a chance, even if they lose, to still end up with a top 2 or 3 draft pick. So we'll see what happens. But that's it for this episode of Patscast. Went a little bit long today, but there's just so much to talk about. But I'm curious to hear from you in the comments. Let me know, what do you think the Patriots should do with the head coaching gig? What do you think they should do with the coaching staff? What do you think they should do with the front office? Who is your preference at head coach? Is it Mike Vrabel? Is it Ben Johnson? Is it somebody else? Is it one of the names that I floated out? Brian Flores? Eric Bieniemy? Let me know in the comments below. Curious to hear from you. And if you're watching on YouTube, be sure to smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, hit that notification bell, or subscribe if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And we'll see you on Sunday after the game.
It's been a rough year. The team's on the ropes. Mayo's in the spotlight, running out of hope. The fans are chanting, fire in now. Kraft's in the box, wiping sweat from his brow. Does he have the guts to blow it all apart? To tear it all down and make a fresh start? Vrabel's in the wings, Johnson's on the phone. The Pats need a leader to bring them back home. Pats cast, the heart of the storm. Will Kraft take the risk or stick to the norm? Pats cast, it's glory or bust. Does Robert Kraft have the guts to trust? Mike Vrabel's prowling, he's hungry for the job. A Patriots legend, not some ordinary slob. Ben Johnson's calling with schemes in his mind. A genius in waiting, but is it the right time? The culture's in shambles, the defense is weak. Mayo's on thin ice and the fans want to speak. It's a nuclear option, the choice is unclear. Pats Cast is asking, what's Kraft's next gear? Pats Cast, the voice of the fight. Will the Pats rise again or fade into the night? Pats Cast, it's now or it's never. Does Robert Kraft have the guts to endeavor? The stakes couldn't be higher, the clock's ticking fast. A franchise in limbo, living in the past. Drake May is ready, the cap space is there. But it's all for nothing if the leadership's bare. Buffalo's coming, the season's last test. Mayo's fate hinges on how they contest. A tough decision, but the whispers grow loud. Pats Cast is here to cut through the crowd. Pats Cast, the flame that ignites a dynasty's rebirth or its final night. Pats Cast, the call of the brave. Does Kraft have the guts to dig the Pats from their grave? So tune in, dear fans, as the saga unfolds. Will Kraft play it safe or be daring and bold? Pats Cast will lead you through every twist and fight, rocking the truth every game day night.